you were in the last episode number 275, you may have come away a little bit down because we're talking about all the ways that you have to wait 5 years in many cases for revitalization to take place. Now we're going to give you a little bit more hope because within that 5-year period and beyond it, of course, there are times that you can have low-hanging fruit to grow your church. We've talked about it a lot, Mark. The list in the show notes is definitely not exhaustive, but it can be helpful. So let's talk about this low-hanging fruit. A lot of it is low-cost paint or landscaping. I've heard the story of a church in the Kansas City area that painted some rooms, and you had volunteers, and they probably, I don't know if they bought their own paint, but it was not that expensive for that paint. And you were able to begin to get some people excited about the church with just low cost paint or landscaping.
I agree. Even just moving some plants off the stage, or how about just dusting those silk plants a little bit, shining up those leaves a little bit. Maybe that'd be, maybe those are the dustiest things in the world. So no, seriously, we say it all the time. First and foremost, clean up your lawn because that's what people see. So rake the leaves, trim the hedges, put some new mulch down, put some new landscaping, make it look like somebody lives there, for goodness sake. And also, if you can, put out a banner or a sign. And if you're in a small town or a rural area, they're not going to give you any trouble with that. If you're in a city, and put it up till the city makes you take it down. But go ahead and put up a banner at the beginning of the school year that says we pray for our teachers and our students, or whatever, just so it looks like something's happening there. And of course, on that banner, put your church's website. But those are simple things, but they mean a lot. Also, Dr. Rayner, exterior lighting is really inexpensive today compared to 20 years ago. LED exterior lighting is really inexpensive. And I would say, before I would spend a lot of money on the inside of my building, if I'm trying to revitalize it, I would put some money in the landscaping, and that's just sometimes just hard work, just cleaning it up, and in maybe painting some of the trim and that kind of thing. But also putting some good exterior lighting that's LED lighting at night that lights up your building that looks like, again, somebody lives there. You drive by a church building, it's all dark, at night, especially in the winter when it gets dark at 4 or 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. But that thing is lit up. And if it looks like it's got some newer kind of lighting, like the LED lighting that you can get, it's amazing how that not only changes the attitude sort of the community that maybe there's something going on here, but I've seen it change the attitude of the church members. That's, hey, something is going on here.
Yep. And you're right. Church members and those in the neighborhood, they pass by and say, I haven't seen that sign before.
Exactly.
I haven't seen that banner before.
Right.
Maybe this church is not as dead as I thought it was.
Exactly.
Maybe I'm recognizing it. You did a perfect segue to number 2, and that's new church signage. There are 2 ways to look at new church signage. You may get a new permanent sign, or you may put banners out.
Right.
2 ways to do that.
But whatever you do, put your web address on there, please. Yes, and maybe your service time. Those are the only 2 things you need. You don't need the pastor's name.
Right.
I mean, unless you're Billy Graham, nobody knows who you are anyway. So you don't need the pastor.
If you put Billy Graham, you may get some attention.
You may, but you really don't need your pastor's name.
Billy Graham is
By the way,
here.
Anybody watching on YouTube, look at that hair. Look at that. That's what you call beautiful a hat hair, man. That is pretty cool. There are guys that pay money to get their hair to look like that. I'm just saying. If you're not watching on YouTube, you got to go home and get on YouTube. But
go look at Mark's hair on YouTube. It's covered by this International Harvester hat, but he took it off for you. So
I did. No, I put on your sign, put your church's web address, maybe even your Facebook or Twitter, either one of those 2, if you got that. I wouldn't worry about the phone number, frankly. I would do the web, and something big like that. I mean, people put all this stuff on the sign, and you're driving by, and you can't. If you just put your church's name, web address, Sunday worship 1045. I mean, that's really all you need, I think.
Well, and keep in mind, in most locations, because of driving by, it's only going to be a few seconds they're going to look at it. They're not going to even be able to look at that cute saying that you've put on there.
No, don't.
You want to post on Facebook.
Don't do that. The 90s call. They want their church signs back. Don't be putting. Listen. Look, I know you think it's funny, and I used to do it. I mean, I did it. I had it. It was a church. I mean, I would do that. By the way, I had one of those signs, and I had a friend of mine went up, and he got the letters out of it. This is years ago. He got to the letters in the office. I went up on Sunday morning, and the sign said, "Milk $1.29 a gallon, cigarettes $3.84 a pack." That's true.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
But no, my point is, with people going through inflation and financial difficulties, and by the way, Frank Lewis said something at a meeting I was at the other day, and he said that every person you preach to on Sunday morning, before their life will be affected by either cancer or addiction, either them or someone they know or someone they care about. People driving by that church sign, their lives, many of them are crushed, and they don't need some cute little sign like you're some sort of a coffee shop. I mean, that's just, it almost degrades in some way the importance of what we're doing and how much we care about the community. I used to do it. I used to put up cute little signs, our Sundays are sweet and all that kind of stuff. But
Come to our Sunday. We'll put some whipped cream and a cherry on top.
Yeah, whatever. I went by a church out here in Kansas. The pastor's a good friend of mine, and he loves Charles Spurgeon. So he put on the sign, a lie has gone around the world while a truth's putting on its boots, Charles Spurgeon. So I just had to pull in the parking lot. His car was there. I went and I said, "Dude, that is Mark Twain. That is not Charles Spurgeon." He said, "I know, but it looks better with Spurgeon." So there you go.
Well, I didn't know that. So you told me something. It does sound more Twainish than Spurgeonish.
That's right.
But I would not have known that. Mark, when I was a dean at Southern Seminary, before I went to Lifeway, before I went to Church Answer, so we're talking a quarter of a century ago, I was interim pastor of 10 churches. The smallest church that I was pastor of was a church in northern Kentucky, and I'll just leave it at that. But actually, I love the church. So if any of the church members are hearing me talk about it, I love my time there. But I was not able to find the church to be when I went to my first Sunday there, because they gave me the address, but I couldn't see a church sign. The church sign was way out on the road, and you had to drive to the church. And finally, I turned around. GPS was antiquated back then, if it was at all. I turned around and I said, "Oh, there's a sign here." The church sign was on the road.
Yeah.
But so old that you could not see the name of the church. The white letters had become black.
Yeah.
It's just kind of this blob out there. First thing I was able to do there is say, let's raise some money and get a brand new permanent sign.
Yeah.
We did the banner. It was so cool to see the reaction once we got the new sign. So that was my interim contribution there. They said the preaching was lousy, but it's a great sign, Rainer, and we're glad you came to that.
I painted my first church sign. I was a pastor of Alta Vista Baptist Church in Weatherby, Missouri, out in the country in 1978. I was an 18-year-old college student, and we didn't have a sign. So my roommate and I, we got this 4x8 piece of plywood, and we went down to my parents' basement, and we painted this sign. It looked pretty ratty, but if I had it now, I could probably sell it. It'd be like some sort of people like that kind of homemade art. What do you call that?
Vintage?
Yeah, not vintage, but anyway, they sell it on American Pickers all the time. These things that look really, really, really bad, like some poor old man did it. Anyway, that's what our church sign, and it was up there. It was up there forever. But yet it was big and bright and red, and people saw it. And out in the country, it was something new, and it was pretty easy and pretty cheap to do. I wouldn't recommend you paint your own sign. But let me get back real quick to if you've got a changeable marquee. All right. If you've got that, I know you can put on there events that are coming to your church. I'm not sure anybody's really going to see that and come. Put them if you want to. I think you're better off if you put things like a web address for people who are struggling with addiction, a suicide hotline, just to show the community you care about the real problems that they're going through, something along that line, rather than some cute little phrase or some self-promotion that people aren't going to probably look at. So I would see if there's a way you could use that sign to really try to benefit the community and let people know you care about them. And here's some resources. You may be struggling right now. Here's some place you can get some help. That's what I would do with it.
Another low-hanging fruit is to train a welcome team. I wrote a little book. We'll put it in the show notes, and it's called Becoming a Welcoming Church. And it basically trains people how to get ready for guests. If you have that sign that has the website, if you have that sign that then leads them to the service times, they may actually show up. Are you ready?
Right.
Are you ready when they show up?
Right. And how do you greet them, and how do you engage them in conversation without making them feel like they're being interrogated? In this day and age, back when you and I were young people, they'd be a deacon in a three-piece suit, and he would put a visitor badge on you. Or like my dad used to do, he'd actually say, do we have any visitors with us today? And they would stand, and then the usher would come down and hand them a visitor badge to stick on. And that was considered thoughtful of the visitor, right? Well, times have changed. And so there is this balance between making them feel welcome without making them feel like they're a spectacle, making them feel like this is a place they can fit in without making it look like you're not even noticing that they're there. And so your people need to be trained in how to do that, how to greet new timers, how to begin a conversation, how to read their body language to know whether you can really drill down a little more, if you need to kind of back off and give them space. And you just need to train your folks on how to do that. Because you're right, Dr. Rayner, you get one first impression. And, Tom, Rick Warren used to say, whoever greets you at the door better look like the people you're trying to reach. And that may be overly simplistic, but not really. I mean, if the first person they see is someone dressed in a three-piece suit, but nobody else in the church wears a three-piece suit, you're sending kind of a wrong message, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense. I was a student at seminary, and we had no money. So therefore we had no means of vacation. But a real nice person said, I've got a condo in Florida. We're going to give you a week. I mean, we were just blown away. So we made the drive from Louisville, Kentucky to the panhandle of Florida, and being the good Christians that we are, we're going to church on a Sunday, even though, we're at the beach. And so we did. Don't even remember the church. It was not on the beach. It was inland more, but came the welcome time, and my family was already conspicuous. 3 young boys, Nellie Jo and me, young back then. And I think they knew we were the only guests there. I don't know if there were any other guests there, but I think they did. They said, "Do we have any guests here?" And everybody turns their heads and look at me. So I put my hand up, kind of like right by my eyes, and say, "Yeah." Stand up and introduce yourself.
There you go. Why are you here? Who are you?
I tell you what, I said, make a note. Next time we're at this beach, find another church to visit. I am not going back where I have to stand up and introduce myself. That Mark was in the 80s. Imagine in the 2020s right now.
Right. And there are still some churches listening to us who probably do that. And
well, in the words of Bob Newhart in his counseling training, don't stop it.
Just
stop
it.
Just stop it.
Let's give them a freebie here. One of the best things you can do for new visitors, other than handing them a bulletin and saying, "We're glad you're here," is to make sure they don't sit by themselves. So if you just train your folks, if you see new people come in and they're sitting in a row all by themselves, just get up and go sit by them. You don't have to bug them all during church or ask them 20 questions. Just say, "We're glad you're here." And that way they're not sitting alone. And I think that does mean that brings a sense of comfort to people. I think that they're not standing out and sitting all by themselves.
Good word. Let's go back to the church members. We've been talking about low-hanging fruit, and church members can train themselves to reach the community. Another thing that they can do is they can sing songs the congregation knows. Let's go back to Keith Getty's interview. Wasn't that fun?
I had a great time with Keith Getty's interview. Both we had 2 episodes.
We had 2 episodes, and they released in October of 2022. If you're looking to go back and listen or watch those, and one thing Keith said, and it's just lovable Irish accent. I'm not going to do it because anytime a South Alabama boy tries to do an Irish accent, it really sounds terrible. But I said, what do you tell these pastors of churches that have 20 or 30 people, they have no musicians? And he said, just sing hymns they know.
Yep.
And listen to the congregational singing. That's a form of low-hanging fruit revitalization, Mark.
It really, truly is. And I've had personal experience with that on many occasions. Oh, man, a long time ago when Jill and I were in Canada, in Montreal, serving, I was asked to go preach at a Greek Baptist church that met in a little Anglican church building on Sunday afternoons. We walked in there, and there were 9 ladies and a couple of elderly men, and that's all. And, these Montreal is a big Greek community, and these people had been in that community, but they'd become followers of Jesus and Baptist. And so they'd kind of left that community, or that community had kind of left them. They were sort of ostracized from it. So this was their own little community of faith. They hadn't had a pastor in years. They just found anybody that come preach for them. So I showed up to preach for them. They had really no one to play any instrument or anything. And they didn't sing all that well, but they sang loud, and they sang with all of their heart. And so here Jill and I walk in here, and we see this dozen mostly elderly saints who haven't had a pastor in years in a very difficult environment, but they love to sing about Jesus. And to this day, Jill and I, that one of the highest worship experiences we've ever had. And we've been to the Sing conferences, we've been to all kinds of things. But if you ask us, being with those Greek believers there in Montreal, singing as loud as they could with as much passion, maybe not with beautiful music, I'm telling you, the Holy Spirit can convict a lost person when that lost person sees a believer truly worship Jesus. And so there's a real power in just singing together, and doesn't have to be great music. It's just the heart of people singing. And we get hung up so many times on the music has to be really good, and we have to have a praise band. We've got to anymore, man. You can just, there's all kinds of resources to put on video and let people sing with it, and songs that they know, songs that are easy to sing. That is low hanging fruit, my friend.
And it's a word for all churches too, just to get that congregational singing for the songs that they do know, and it is good. Once again, just go back to Revitalize and Replant in October of 2022. There's a 2-part series interview with Keith Getty, and you will be blessed. There's so many things we can say, Mark. I'm going to just make this kind of the wrap up for it. We could say a lot more. Another thing of low hanging fruit is get your people praying for the community, and let those particular community members know that you are praying for them.
Right. We a couple of times at our little church in Linwood, we've hung little bags. You can get them online, just little plastic door hanging bags. We go down to one of the big box stores and buy a bunch of packaged cookies. We stick one in each bag. We stick a gospel track in each bag, but we also oftentimes will stick a card in each bag. It's a prayer card, and we just say, "Hey, we know this is a difficult time. Our church prays every week. We'd love to pray for you." And you can go online. There's a web address, and give us your prayer request. Or you can brought this little card. We had a little slot in an old mail slot in the building where you used to put the mail down the inside the building. We just call it the prayer card now. People could actually stop and drop in their prayer cards. We haven't had a lot of those, I'll be honest with you, but I do know this: everybody in town knows that we're a church that prays for people, and that's important too.
That is absolutely key. Well, these are just some types of low-hanging fruit. In the previous episode, Mark and I talked about the 5 years of revitalization, but we wanted to say even in the first 5 years, you can do things. You could obviously do these after the 5 years, but in the first 5 years, you're able to do, and these are just some of the examples. What we're going to do in the next episode, they're all fun. Mark Clifton is just Mr. Fun Person. But in the next episode, when we get to episode number 277, we're going to talk about attendance barriers. And there used to be this great move in the American church about breaking the 200 barrier. We're going to be coming back and saying, the barrier's a little bit smaller now, and you need to break the 5100 barrier before you even think about the 200 barrier. That's just a little teaser for episode number 277. Mark, this has been a fun one talking about low-hanging fruit, but we'll see you, Mark, and we'll see the rest of the audience, hear, whatever the case may be, when we talk about next week why the 65 to 100 in attendance has become the new growth barrier. We'll see you in the next episode.